Mo Salah set his tongues wagging with his Instagram post about him. He will never forget what it feels to score like in front of the Kop. I don't know what I'd be interested to hear what you make of it, because it's not his first public sort of plea almost this season. I think it was after the Man United game, was it? He mentioned that it was his last season, sort of dropped that into an interview. For me, it feels a bit more like maybe this is wishful thinking, but a bit more like a plea saying, okay, try and make me stay. Please make me stay. It feels like he wants to stay rather than he's sort of hinting at a departure.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think he showed that after the Manchester United game as well. This is a player that really wants to stay. The one thing that's got to happen in this process, and contract talks are ongoing, is there's got to be some compromise from his side. I think it's just too risky for Liverpool to give him a 3-year contract at his current wage. Is that, for me, there's just definite decline is going to happen in that period, and they can't afford to be paying him 350 grand for a lesser version of Mo Salah. But I think 2 years feels safer. It feels like the better compromise for everyone. And I think what he's doing with that social media post is just trying to put the pressure on Liverpool. And in fairness, it absolutely worked, because I don't know if you saw all the replies to that tweet. It was kind of, people saying, just give him what he wants. You have to sign him up. You can't let him go. So if that was his aim, it absolutely worked, I think. But I think all of his actions kind of show a player who would really like to stay at Liverpool. And I think he wants to keep climbing that Premier League top scorers list. Same with the Liverpool list as well. And I just think, when you've got a player who is clearly that desperate to stay, I don't think he's going to be sitting there saying, if you don't give me 3 years, I'm going to leave. I think there is an openness to compromise on his side, which is really, really, bodes well for Liverpool. So, if you've got that, then I'm sure that compromise can be reached, and it's just a case of thrashing that out over the next few months.
Yeah, and we've spoken about him potentially, in the nicest possible way, being the lowest priority of the three of Van Dijk and Trent to sign a new contract. Could that change over the course of the season if he goes and carries on? He's made such a good start to the season, and you say there's going to be definite decline, but there's been no sign of it so far. I get your point. In 3 years' time, it's going to be completely different. But Slot mentioned in the same breath as Ronaldo and Messi, the things they're still doing in their late 30s. Salah looks after himself really well. It's entirely possible that in 3 years' time he could still be Liverpool's top scorer in the season. So if he goes and scores 30 odd goals this season, could that sort of priority level change for you and maybe bump him up, especially with Trent and Real Madrid rumours growing and things like that?
I think the big worry from Liverpool's perspective, and I kind of feel bad talking about this, because it kind of, almost like doing down Mo Salah or saying it's not important that he stays. I mean, he's absolutely unbelievable, world-class player and has been for years and years. But I think if you're Liverpool and you're looking at it, a 3-year contract isn't just 3 years' time as well. It's 4 years' time, essentially, because we're only in the very start of this season. He gets to the end of that, then another 3 years. I mean, it seems crazy to me to think that in even in another couple of years' time you'll still be hitting these numbers. And Liverpool don't want to kind of trap themselves in a bad contract that will really impact them on the pitch, because if you pay Mo Salah that and he isn't scoring at the level he is at the moment, he isn't assisting, he isn't that crucial to you, it's a wage you can't give to someone else to do that job for you. So it's difficult decisions that you've got to make. And I see what you're saying about in terms of him pushing himself up as a priority, but I just think, for Liverpool, the number one priority is always going to be Trent, because there's no doubt over what he's going to offer over the next few years. You're looking at his peak years. He's a local lad and future captain. That has to be number one priority. I think you can argue and kind of split hairs over the two after that in Van Dijk and Salah, and it is difficult. But I just think the thing that's always going to hang over the Salah one is the size of his wage packet and the fact he isn't going to take a wage cut. That's what makes that really tricky, and is maybe the reason why it might be left to last. But we'll see how it plays out. I still think there's chance for compromise there. As I say, I still think there's that desire from the players' side, and Liverpool obviously won't want to give them themselves the headache of having to find Mo Salah's goals for next season, because I think as a bare minimum you can say he's at least going to be this much of a threat for the next season. But there are things they also have to consider, which is obviously, like, as I say, his age, when the decline is going to happen. He's got AFCON next season, and also I would mention that in the last few years he's tended to slightly tail off in the back end of seasons. He started really well and on fire, but not quite scored as many in the latter parts of the season. So Liverpool have also got to kind of factor that in as well, and how they manage his minutes and whether they can counteract that. But it's a tricky one, and yeah, you just hope that they can find that compromise, and at the very least, he's here for another couple of seasons.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about his legacy last week, didn't we? And how, he's one of Liverpool's greatest ever players. So, yeah, while we're saying he's lowest priority, he's still probably third highest priority in the whole squad. So he's, it sounds like we're putting him down, but absolutely one of the greats we've ever seen in a Liverpool shirt.
I think as well, it's just important to sort of think about it sometimes from the Liverpool perspective. It's so easy for us to fall into the trap and kind of get emotional about it and think you cannot let this guy go. And I mean, after that goal goes in against Brighton, I'm very much thinking similarly. But I also understand what Liverpool have to do here and how they have to protect themselves. I mean, people get angry when you get a situation like Fabinho falling off a cliff, and then they got an easy out with that one in terms of offloading to Saudi, and maybe that route is there for them with Mo Salah, by the way. But they can't guarantee that, and you've got to be very careful. You don't want to end up with an Ozil situation and Alexis Sanchez, someone who just you're paying a ridiculous wage to, and they suddenly just go like that. And it can happen suddenly. That's the thing. Fabinho is the biggest proof of that. Jordan Henderson did similar. He just went from being top level to just falling off a cliff, and that is what Liverpool will not want. And so you've got to be very careful about it. It's just, as much as if you take the emotion out of it, it's a far trickier decision, and I think we do sometimes just have to kind of acknowledge that is the case.
Yeah, and I think one thing Liverpool have been good at, better than a lot of rivals in terms of the transfer aspect, is not having those underperforming players on massive wages. So yeah, obviously you can't have it all. Liverpool, we want to see Salah performing in a Liverpool shirt as long as possible, but yeah, as you point out, the club are rightly probably averse to a bit of risk with that because they've seen what has happened with other players. I wonder, is there maybe the possibility, you mentioned the Saudi route, of maybe giving him the 3-year one with the thought of selling him for a bit more money than you would be able to otherwise in 1 or 2 years? I don't know if that's an option.
But I saw a story the other day about kind of the PIF are kind of withdrawing a little bit of their investment in that as well, or lessening it over the coming years. So again, how long's that kind of cash cow going to exist? How long is that out for Premier League clubs going to be there? Because we already saw a lessening of it last summer in comparison to the summer before that, really, in terms of how many players moved over there and how much money was spent. So Salah's maybe a different case because he's this Arab icon, isn't he? And surely that desire will always be there. But as I say, Liverpool, they might not feel that guarantee is there and might worry about that. And that, as I say, is a factor. But they've been generally pretty good at judging this in terms of, you think of some of the players that have left on free transfers in recent years. Firmino's not really, pulling up any trees in Saudi Arabia. Jorginho, Wijnaldum didn't do anything after that. Mane went with a year left on his contract, but that proved to be a good decision because he didn't do much at Bayern, for example. So they've tended to be pretty good at judging this. But with Salah, it would be a shock if he left this time, in the summer coming, and then didn't produce goals, because he's still doing it at this higher level. And again, one thing that's in his mind as well is that he wants to continue playing at this highest level. So again, Liverpool can probably leverage that in negotiations, and it is confrontational, and we will be butting heads at the moment, and that is all part of it. But that, it just gives you a chance to think that maybe that they can find that compromise. But we'll see how that plays out.